the specific timeframes associated with this, which we all sort of believe to be the case after the initial consultation phase, most of you will have seen has now been updated as of yesterday and sort of changed after an announcement from Angela Rayner yesterday. So this is something which obviously everyone needs to be aware of and sort of begin preparing for. Everyone's known it's coming, but the specifics are a little bit more clear now, maybe still with some uncertainty or nuance around some of the language used. But I guess just to begin getting into those specifics before we move into sort of panelist introductions and sort of open the discussion out a little bit further, is that the first one is that the investigation into a damp or mould report needs to be looked into within 10 days, effectively 10 working days. Now, those deemed to be significant, and again, that's something which maybe needs a little bit of clarity. The properties need to be made safe within 5 working days of the investigation concluding. And again, that might need a little bit of definition around what that means in terms of when the investigation concludes. For those cases which are deemed an emergency and posing immediate risk to the tenant, and I think in that case what we're talking about there is that it's going to likely cause health issues, usually sort of respiratory related, then they need to be investigated and action needs to be taken on an emergency basis within 24 hours. I think the wording is reasonably practicable, but in any event within 24 hours. A written summary of the investigation itself, including findings, planned action, must also be provided to the tenant within 3 working days, again, of that investigation concluding, which again is a sort of a definition question potentially. And I think an interesting point, which maybe feels a little bit newer than the sort of consultation phase, but if that property cannot be made safe within the specified timeframes, then what the landlord must do is at least offer to arrange alternative accommodation at the landlord's expense as well to the tenant until those repairs of the required repairs have been completed. Now, I think in terms of compliance around this and what might happen if compliance isn't met, the regulator and ombudsman will have more power to act upon non-compliance, and there's talks of sort of fines and things being put in place with these sorts of cases likely going quite public. There'll be reputational damage associated with it, obviously, as well. Tenants will have more power themselves to hold the landlord to account and also to sort of drive towards compensation, probably through the courts if the issues are not remediated and have caused issues and can be proved to have caused issues from a health and respiratory problem perspective. Now, because this has been so public due to the tragic impact this issue's already shown us a few years ago, naturally, damp mould and condensation reports have risen significantly in terms of defects and complaints from tenants. And I think where we at Prodo are hearing and what we're seeing in terms of where providers are right now is that they're kind of in a place where everyone's wanting to and obviously needs to get to a more proactive situation to get ahead on these things, but currently having to deal with a very large backlog of raised repairs, naturally because tenants have got in touch with a direct worry. There is quite a list to get through, and I think a lot of associations are having to take quite a lot of time to investigate into these reports a little bit further, request a bit further information, arrange sort of physical inspections, but also make the time to prioritise and take action on those higher priority ones. Naturally, some of them will be lower priority as well. But ultimately, we know that housing teams and sort of the sector across the board generally is stretched as it is. So it's one of those, as I say, which I think we've known has been coming for a while. But the more we discuss it, it feels like there's still organisations that don't feel ready at all for these sorts of reasons, just having to sort of deal with the backlog, really.